Intelligence is the ability to make finer distinctions. That is a quote inside of a book I read, and I found that incredibly interesting as a sort of measurement of how smart one can potentially be. The school system nowadays sort of portrays IQ, intelligence quotient, as the sort of main marker for how smart one individual is. Problem is, there are 7 billion people on this planet. No one has the same brain. Everyone will learn most optimally in a different sort of way. Everyone will be able to remember things if it's told to them slightly differently compared to someone else. But while learning and understanding, having a good memory is sort of a whole different thing to like IQ and stuff. Intelligence, in this book that I read, is the ability to make finer distinctions, take one thing and end up distinguishing it from another thing that is similar, ends up meaning that you are technically more intelligent than someone who couldn't. And while I read this book during my summer holidays, I didn't really seem to be able to understand any applications of this quote until I started one of my first chemistry lessons inside of college. We were going through the basics, doing a few definitions of a few of the sort of words that kind of exist as sort of general chemical vocabulary: element, atom, compound, molecule, mixture, all that sort of stuff. Yet in this lesson, no one could actually distinguish, including myself at this point in time, the difference between a molecule and a compound. And after this lesson, I really understood the application of this quote: the intelligence is the ability to make finer distinctions. I, before this lesson, could not make the fine distinction between a compound and a molecule. But then after this lesson, I understood the difference between the two more than sort of I'd ever known before, I guess. And if you would like to know the separate definitions of what a compound and a molecule actually is, when I was being taught by the teacher in this lesson, the compound, a compound as a sort of specific language terminology, compound is 2 or more elements chemically combining to form a compound. There can be 2, there can be 3, 4, 5, 6. Things such as capsaicin, that's a compound. Things such as vanillamine, that's a compound. Things such as acetyl-CoA, that's a compound. They all have 2 or more molecules chemically combined to each other. But what does that mean a molecule is? What's the difference between a molecule and a compound? Acetyl-CoA, that's also a molecule. So is capsaicin, so is vanillamine. All of that sort of stuff, it's all a molecule as well as a compound. So what exactly is the difference between the two? A compound, I mentioned 2 or more. I tried to emphasize the 2 as much as I could. A molecule is 1 or more elements chemically combining to form something like vanillamine, capsaicin, because you may understand this from sort of your school chemistry classes that you may have had in the past, but some elements can be diatomic, meaning when they are in their most stable state, they are actually chemically combined to each other. But at that point, this sort of O2 molecule, this Cl2, this F2, this N2, these diatomic molecules, at that point in time, they are molecules because they are 1 or more elements chemically combining. And you can't call these compounds, you can't call O2, N2, etc. compounds, because they're not compounds, because they are not 2 or more elements chemically combining. Those elements that are 2 or more must be different, by the way. It has to be 2 or more, and so the molecules can be 1, which means things like O2 and N2 are specifically defined to being a molecule, not a compound. And once this lesson was over, as I said, I understood the application of this quote, but I also, in a weird sort of self-esteem, wholesome kind of way, did feel more intelligent in the field of chemistry, simply because I'd read this quote before in a book. It sort of stuck with me, especially in this lesson when I was sort of stumped on the difference between the two. And then by the end of the lesson, now I can tell the difference between the two. That's why I am telling it to you now. And yeah, it feels very interesting, but I feel like there are ways that many people can apply this into their daily lives to become more intelligent in their craft, in their sort of field of expertise, make the fine distinction and to distinguish between 2 things that are similar that you may think are the same, but are not the same because they do have 2 separate definitions. Intelligence is the ability to make fine distinctions. I absolutely love that quote, and I will never get it out of my head. I'll always find ways to try be more intelligent in my chosen fields by making finer distinctions into sort of things, delving deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, as deep as I possibly can, into the sort of fields that I'm interested in, the things that I'm interested in, to be able to be more intelligent and distinguish between things in those sort of fields. Someone who is potentially not necessarily the most educated person on a mathematical basis. I'm personally not very good at like maths as good as other people are, but like I'm probably above average, I personally say. And there are many people that are so much smarter than me in math. They can make fine distinctions or proofs and stuff between things. You may have seen the sort of meme math videos on YouTube, etc., where they kind of prove like simple things like 2 + 2 = 4, 1 + 1 = 2. That is essentially making finer distinctions. While everyone knows 1 + 1 = 2, not many people know that there is a way to specifically prove that statement, but there is. And people that are intelligent in maths know that, and they are able to do it with absolute awe and expertise, and like absolute just with ease. They make it look easy, be able to prove things using such wide and incredibly complicated methods that are so simple because they made the final distinction. Hopefully that doesn't seem like a stupid example, and hopefully you haven't turned off this video because you thought that was a stupid example, but I hope you can now understand how you can apply things into your daily life. Intelligence is the ability to make final distinctions, and I hope, as I took that quote with me when I read this book in the summer, I hope you can too after watching this video. Thank you, and I recommend subscribing because I love this community of young tribal people who are willing to improve themselves so much more than they already have, and good luck.